Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with veteran jazz pianist and composer Andy Milne on the 2024 CD with Unison called Time Will Tell. This new album was recorded with his trio Unison. It's out on Sunnyside Records. He gets into the construction of this latest collaboration with his bassist John Hébert and drummer Clarence Penn in a sparkling exploration of identity and destiny, showcasing their ever-evolving work together. We get into this project, surviving COVID, his career, and future ahead. Dig in.
The last time we caught up was during the pandemic when it was kind of in the early stages, I believe.
Probably, yeah, because that was the last time I did a record. It came out conveniently right at the top of that lockdown.
Yes. So we're in better times now. You've teamed up with Unison. Time Will Tell is the newest album. But I want to just kind of get a summary, so to speak, of surviving that COVID time period. How did you get through that time period, and how did it subsequently change you?
Well, I mean, I guess I got through it because my wife and I were together for the most part of it, and we were able to spend a lot of time together and catch up on all the time that we don't get to spend together because we're both traveling musicians. So I think that was, probably first and foremost. And then I spent a lot of my energy actually kind of really revamping and updating my skill set as it pertains to like my working in film and television. And so I was really just sort of focused on improving my workflow and my studio setup and just skill sets. And so I kind of spent a lot of time doing that. And then on top of it, because I was still teaching in person, it was kind of a full frontal focus on, very few people were in person. And so like for my students, I was kind of a real lifeline. And so it was very, as normal as it can be to walk into a room and teach, with a mask, everybody masked up except for the horn players. That was kind of like another focus to kind of get through. And it of course it changes you because you don't really, you remember it with less and less detail as time goes on, and it's retained, our psyche retains something even if we don't have this sort of daily memory of it. But I think it sort of helps you prioritize things differently. At least I hope. I think my fear is that we learn a lot and then we forget what we learn.
Well, I think there was that fear, just like after 9/11, that there was this level of cognizance, there was kind of a renewed energy in people, and then it just kind of withered and went away. And I
Right.
talked to a lot of people right after COVID kind of came to a close and live shows happened. And I get the sense, and I don't know how you feel about it, I think there's genuinely an appreciation that's somewhat permanent for live music and for what you guys do. Are you getting that sense?
I mean, I would like to think that that's a sense that exists, but I think that the short-term memory and the obsession with stuff and the grip that greed and capitalism have on our society make it such that you can have these well-meaning forces and sentiments that are out there, and yet we're working against this other clock. I mean, we're working against the obsession with AI and the idea that humanity can do things well, and yet we want to replace them with algorithms and with machines. And so it's a strange dichotomy to have that sentiment that you're talking about being out there, and at the same time we've got this other pressure point working on the same. It's not in a vacuum, and so it's like I could try to remain optimistic, but at the same time I'm like these other pressure points are just baffling because we're cannibalizing human expression in favor of kind of going, oh look, isn't it so neat? We can get the machine to do it. You can get a machine to do things that are perilous for humans. I'm all for it. But why do you want the machine to write the song and to paint the painting and to write the book? Like, that's what we do best.
Yeah, and it's interesting, with this advent of AI and everybody's, got their philosophy or their theory on it. I think at the end of the day, in theory, it's fine, but we all know what happens when human beings really get their hands on something.
Yeah, gets messier. But it's something we should be cherishing, not banishing.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing that I kind of mentioned at the top was that you had released this album during the pandemic. Is there a general sense of relief? Is there a different feeling, a refreshing feeling that goes into this release, being kind of post-pandemic and having that chance to do what you always did prior to the pandemic, which is play live, promote it the way that you wanted? Is any of that kind of permeated this release?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I got a lot of different things going on in my life now that I didn't have going on when the last record came out, ironically, right as the lockdown was happening, but so there's different pressure points and sort of horizons to be balancing. But for sure, I mean, like, to know, knocking on wood, I'm not going to have to cancel this tour that I'm going out next month to support this recording coming out, which is, having had to live through that. It's like this snowstorm that happened in a May, when you would normally, April or May, when you wouldn't normally have a snowstorm. You're having this snowstorm where you have to cancel things. I mean, I've had to cancel gigs because of snowstorms, but it didn't have this global reach like the pandemic did, right? So this is something that everybody was subject to, and it was certainly wonderful when I did eventually get back out and tour a couple of years ago to sort of really cherish that connection with audiences and with musicians too, and so largely that's something that I guess you can return to being able to appreciate. And now it's more the work of kind of like, but the world marches on. And so, yes, we don't forget about a pandemic like that, but we've been suitably distracted by the various other bits of noise that are kind of preventing us from, I guess, maybe becoming more compassionate, more evolved as a civilization in some ways. So that work is still out there, and so I think that getting out and playing music is a small part of that, exchange that we have with fellow humans, and trying to not lose sight of the other work, I think is maybe what's sort of still in there for me, as somebody who's fortunate to be able to go out and play music for people.
So talk to me about Time Will Tell with Unison. Give me an idea of, what was kind of the idea, the artistic forces that went into this album?
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, talking about what I did in the pandemic, I mean, I've been writing, over the last 10 or 12 years, increasingly writing music for films. And so working on my craft for that, it's created a new focus in terms of how I like to present, and shall I say, how I like to respond artistically. And so, for example, in a film, you're writing something that might need to, encapsulate an emotion or a feeling or an action even. And so there's pieces on this album that are either written for a film or a film composer's like response to my own personal narrative, movie narrative, if you will. So the album was created during a period where I was, reconciling and grappling with the reality of meeting members of my birth family and culminating with meeting my birth mother and just before I made the record. So that's kind of like the sort of undertone in there in terms of like bringing an emotion to music, and also just me as an artist and as a person, reconciling some fairly existential or new sort of, experiences to kind of make sense of. And I don't have words for them. I have sounds for them. I have feelings for them. And so that's why music is a wonderful pathway for me to be able to, enter into for my own therapy, if you will.
So talk to me a little bit about what you're hoping the listener gets from this album.
So, I mean, on this album, it's the trio is kind of still the nucleus of the sound, and that's sort of been the focus of being able to have this group, but also I've augmented it with two artists that I have, prior musical relationships with. Yoko Ritano Kimura is a koto player that I've worked with in different iterations, and had been wanting to kind of record with her, and so written music specifically for Koto, and then also augmented in other pieces and in some pieces together with the saxophonist Ingrid Laubruck, who she and I have a duo together that we started playing. It was her duo idea that we started basically back in the middle of the pandemic, really. And so both of those women, I've fond of their musicianship and their personalities, and so it was just an interesting opportunity to kind of find a synthesis between these two different, musical languages for me, because they're sort of representative of different kinds of, I guess, textures that I like to play with. And so it's just, I think I put these challenges in front of myself as a composer to say, can you weave these two things together? And so there's a couple pieces where both koto and saxophone are on, and then there's pieces where it's just one or the other of those guests, but also all kind of like, wrapped in a bow with the trio as the kind of, as the support system, except for one piece where it's just me and koto.
So talk to me a little bit about playing this music live. Anything now that the warm months are upon us? How are things opening up for live shows and promotion?
I mean, I have a tour booked that I'm going to be out for a couple of weeks in May. I don't have anything in Kansas City, unfortunately, but I mean, I'm going to be in the East Coast and a little bit in the Midwest, and then in the Southwest, and then hopefully a couple other spot things happening in the summer. But the funny thing was about like the previous record, there was a lot of bottled up momentum and demand, and so when that record won the Juno in Canada for Jazz Album of the Year, it kind of made it, in some ways, kind of, it sort of, you could capitalize on a lot of that pent up and momentum and attention around a release. So like when we toured, finally, when we were able to tour for that record, it was like 2022. And we toured a lot, and then made this next record. So in this record is really like the birth of kind of having the momentum from the last record, or birthed out of that momentum. And so now, I have to sort of project forward in a way, but there was more bottled up, I think, momentum in terms of around live performance. And so sometimes it's a challenge to find, opportunities that work around the same time when people are available. So that never goes away. It's always hard to figure out.
So it's obviously going to be streaming everywhere. If anyone wants to pick up a copy of this album or find out about your tour dates, where's the best place to go?
The best place to go is probably buying it rather than streaming it. Yeah. But if it's making a living from their investment in their recordings. But you can find it in Spotify and Apple Music, and you can find it in Amazon, and you can find it. My web store, it's going to need another till Monday to get it up on there, unfortunately. But I think you can also get it through Sunnyside Records. They have it on, I don't know, Bandcamp or SoundCloud or one of those two. I forget now. but yeah. you could go to my website, andymilne.com, and you go to the music page, and it'll send you off in the various directions that I've just mentioned.
Wonderful, Andy. It's great to catch back up with you here in this kind of post-pandemic low. Best of luck with the album and the tour. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in Canada, New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Andy for his time, energy, and story. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to theneonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends. Hey Jazz fans, Joe Domino here, the host of the weekly Neon Jazz radio show and regular interview series being produced and distributed from Lee Summit, Missouri. We are quite excited to let you know about the first annual Lee Summit Jazz Fest taking place this summer on June 22nd, 2024 at the Bridge Space located at 210 Southwest Market Street. There will be 8 robust acts, including the Back Alley Brass Band and the great Lee Summit Jazz Orchestra. There will also be art vendors and food trucks to make this a must-attend event. on. All details can be found at www.bridgespace.us/jazz. We will see you there.
Neon Jazz.